Welcome back, everybody, to the Four-Eyed Pregame Show. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. And as you can see on the screen, we have a jam-packed crew today to talk about some football here in Week 2. So let me do some introductions real quick. Returning to the show, Mr. Michael Bauer. You can find VM Bauer 85 on Twitter. Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Glad to be here, guys.
And, of course, returning as always, he's basically a part of the family, David from Fantasy Go. You can find him at Fantasy Go NFL on Twitter. David, how you doing?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Doing pretty well. Thank you very much. And coming back this week, we got Ryan at the Fantasy Dude on TikTok and at TFF Dude on Twitter. If you remember, he was on our Fourth and Frames episode on Wednesday, our Start Sit show. Almost said that incorrectly.
That's a better segment.
Yeah, exactly.
We should do that.
Anywho, Ryan, welcome back, buddy.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's let's just get into some information. Cortland Sutton will start this week. With that, do we still think this is Noah Fant's game from a receiving standpoint or not? Let me start with Ryan. You're shaking your head no already.
I got Sutton on a couple teams. I'm not starting him. The reports were saying he looked like he was battling that shoulder injury in practice all week. So one catch and fall on the ground can just pop him out of the game for sure. So you would instantly go to Fant as maybe the next option. But look what Pittsburgh did last week. I mean, I'm not buying it. I like Fant. If you're in a pinch, tight end's a really thin position. I'm not opposed to it, but if I have other options like a TJ Hawkinson or someone, I'm definitely looking that way.
David, you feel the same way?
I actually like Jerry Jeudy this week. I think he did okay for his first game last week. Keep in mind he's a rookie, so that was his, in essence, preseason game. They targeted him a lot. He ran great, clean routes, especially out of the slot. So in PPR, I really like Jerry Jeudy this week. I think Fant will have an okay day, but he's very touchdown dependent.
Hey, Todd, you're a big slot wide receiver guy. You do all those studies for us here at Fantasy and Frames. What are your thoughts on Jerry Jeudy?
Personally, just this game in general, the Pittsburgh defense looked so good last week. I'm just not trying to touch any of these Denver players. I think Pittsburgh's just going to bring it to them, and so I don't want to touch any of these wide receivers out there.
It's funny that you mentioned Pittsburgh players bringing it to him because we don't know what's going on at running back. Reports today came out and said that James Conner and Benny Snell are going to split carries. One, are you starting Conner anyhow? Two, how concerned? No, everyone's shaking their head in the bottom of the screen. Mike, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on James Conner?
Yeah, if I have him anywhere, which I do not, I'm not starting him. Also, if I could go back real quick, KJ Hamler is making his debut for the Denver Broncos today. I'm probably not starting him. I would also not start Cortland Sutton unless it's out of necessity. But I'm staying away from the Pittsburgh Steelers running backs. If you have to, I guess I would go with Benny Snell.
Okay.
David?
David?
Have to.
Exact same as Michael. I just think it's too much of a risk. Best case scenario, they split carries if they're both healthy. But especially James Conner, he's always an in-game injury risk.
It's kind of weird because the reports came out during the middle of the week that it wasn't so much an ankle injury as it was him getting into it with the coaches on the sideline, and he was just benched in favor of Benny Snell for him getting into it with the coaches and his poor performance. We'll see a lot today. It's kind of interesting. This ankle injury, which kept him out of a game, yet he was full go at practice this week. No injury designations at all. Nate, does this scream to you like a performance issue with James Conner, or is there something more you think going on behind the scenes there?
It's just so weird that it's 4 days after Tomlin said he's our bell cow, and he gave him his vote of confidence, and all of a sudden it's back to there's like you said the disagreements. I think Benny Snell is, I don't want to say as good a running back as Conner, but he showed that. He's explosive. I think having both in the backfield is probably the best thing for the team going forward in all reality.
Just not from a fantasy.
No, God.
Yeah. Another bit of news here. Chris Godwin yesterday was declared out. Are you rolling with Scott Miller today? I picked him up off waivers. I didn't put him on my waiver wire for another wide receiver, which we'll talk about a little bit later that Todd is a big fan of. But Ryan, let's go back to you. Are you how do you feel about Scott Miller?
I'm all about O.J. Howard this week, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
I'm all about O.J. Howard on that team. Scott Miller's going to get his work. Brady likes to dump I view him as more like the Julian Edelman on that team. Do you know what I mean? That guy that's always going to be there for him to get that nice, safe throw. Brady doesn't like to hold the ball. I think he's angry with what happened to him last week and how his coach kind of called him out the way he did. So I see a lot of Scotty Miller. I'm not playing him though.
What about you, Nate?
I mean, again, in a pinch, if that situation came up where I had to, and trust me, there's a lot of people out there that are going to probably have to start Scotty Miller because look at we'll go through them. The number of players at the wide receiver position that are hurt, that are out this week, you could do worse. I mean, I think he's definitely, I don't know. I mean, probably a 5 to 6 catch week.
All right, so let me throw out a quick start-sit question for you. See, I said it right that time. You playing Scott Miller or Cortland Sutton if you have to?
Scott Miller. because
Yeah.
it's just the injury thing.
Just like what Ryan said, Sutton gets banged up.
One fall on that shoulder could end his game, right? I mean, look at we were saying earlier with Mike Williams. He always felt all those catches he made last week. If Cortland had to make a catch like that,
Right.
I don't see him getting up.
And Scotty Miller does get the Panthers, and so that's a huge bonus for him.
Yes,
That's a very good
no
point.
Kuechly in the middle anymore.
Right. Well, they got Shaq Thompson now, so that's just as bad. But for the running game, I think. Speaking of Mike Williams, it is crazy. Like every time I see him go up for a reception, he always lands so awkwardly. It's like, how are you not injured more often? Oh wait,
He's trying to turn football into basketball by the looks of it.
Also, news yesterday that came out: George Kittle will not be playing this week. Before we started talking on the live show during our pregame show, I forget who it was, but you were not a big fan of Jimmy G this week. I actually was looking forward to Jimmy G kind of continuing on against the Jets just because the Jets are so hapless on defense. But with George Kittle out, it makes me wonder, are we expecting a run-heavy game now, or do you think there's a potential for some points to be put up through the air? Let's start with Mike.
I really have no idea. And I hate to say that, but the Jets I think I saw earlier, they only have 4 healthy wide receivers on their roster right now.
Right.
This could really be a defensive and running game for the 49ers, but I don't know. And I mean, Raheem Mostert, it looks like wheels up, but if they go up early, they might just yank him out and put in Tevin Coleman, maybe throw it to with Jerick McKinnon. Because
Mohamed Sanu is their most experienced receiver right now.
That's
he just
bad.
joined the team.
Yeah.
By the way, are we all in on Jordan Reed? He's going to be starting, but
He'll catch one ball, it might be a touchdown, and then he'll leave the game with a rib injury.
Exactly. I'm like, a lot of people are like, oh, you got to pick up Jordan Reed. I was like, I do not do that at all. I'll play Dawson Knox before I play Jordan Reed.
There's one person in this game, and Jorge and I will get to him at the latter part of this segment when we talk about defensive players. And that's on the Jets side of the ball. We'll do that as a foreshadowing for later.
I still, like I said earlier this week, I still really like McKinnon in this game, especially if Kittle wasn't playing.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see similar to what we saw in the NFC Championship last year, where they're just going to run it. If they get a 2-touchdown lead, it's just going to be all the running backs just pounding the rock. So I'm not really buying them going to the air.
Are we in agreement that this is Raheem Mostert's backfield and not a split timeshare with Tevin Coleman?
Oh yeah, they're not the same type of runner in my opinion.
Yeah, going back to what you're saying about Jordan Reed, though, Mike, as a Washington fan, after 7 or 8 concussions, you just kind of wish he would just walk away and ride off into the sunset and think about, his well-being and his family and the friends and all that jazz. And when he signed with the 49ers, I wasn't even thinking football at this point. I'm thinking about quality of life here, man. Like, come on, man. Yeah. But, it is what it is.
I trust the San Francisco backfield as much as an 80-year-old trusting a fart. There's zero chance that you have any idea who it's going to be.
You're so eloquent with you.
Seriously, I told you right last week on the 4th and Frames. He sets it up like nobody.
Right? Is that part of the start and shit show that we're going to be doing?
Exactly.
Going off what David just said, though, I think this is a week where we could see Kyle. I can't say his last name. Just Zusic or whatever. This is a game where I could honestly see him finding the end zone or making some big plays because they're so banged up.
Making no-name running backs relevant for a week.
Yeah, maybe this is a Jeff Wilson game now that we're all talking about all these players. Put in Jeff Wilson in your lineup. Yeah. No, don't do that, folks. I'm just.
It would be who's the one that got released? Hasty.
Yes.
Is that who? Yeah, because I know that was big for you guys, Mike. You guys big fans of his, unfortunately. Sorry, RIP.
Oh,
towards the back end of our rookie breakdown. So, a guy that could do something given a chance, and he didn't get much of a chance. So it is what it is.
Do y'all think McKinnon plays a role this week?
Oh yeah, big time. I think
Big
he's.
time.
I think he's going to get lined up as a receiver more often than a
I was kind
running
of thinking
back.
the same thing.
Especially with how banged up they are at receiver, I think we're going to see him lined up in the slot a lot.
I had to drop him in one league. I wanted to stash him at least past this week just to try and sell him possibly, because I think this week he's going to be definitely a sell, and I had to drop him to pick up a wide receiver for necessity.
Shifting over to quarterbacks really quickly, as you see on the bottom of your screen, we have our rankings, top 5 for every position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. For all those ID peers out there, defensive lineman, defensive back, and linebacker. Let's just take a look at these rankings real quick. We got Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, and Aaron Rodgers himself, who came out firing last week. Looked a little motivated. Any quarterback here not listed that really tickles your fancy? I'm going to go by city. Okay, I see where you're going with that. I see where you're going with that, Ryan. Mike, are you feeling Carson Wentz this week after his performance with the Washington football team last week?
I mean, I have no negative. I don't feel bad about him. It's just their line was so bad last week. I mean, there was a picture that I saw on Facebook. He was getting tackled by 2 defenders, and there was 3 linemen just standing up over there. I'm like, what are you doing? You're getting paid to be there, right? In my one league, I was actually considering starting Drew Lock over him. But then I'm like, but that's really not a good – so I'm just going to roll with Carson. I mean, if you have a better option, you might want to consider it just because the Eagles line is just so banged up right now.
Minshew or
I'd probably start Minshew if I had him. But that's just – I also love Gardner Minshew too. Yeah. So, in all fairness.
Isn't Lane Johnson, I think, returning this week for Philadelphia on the right side?
He is back. Yeah, so that's going to help out a lot. And Miles Sanders is a full go. He said he's 100%, so he's ready to go.
Mm-hmm. I think Sal Powell on ESPN earlier this morning said that while he is a quote-unquote full go, they may try and limit some of his touches. You think that's just talk, or you think that's
I think if the game gets out of hand, they're definitely giving him the rock if they need to.
Yeah, for sure. But I think the first half, you could see a good split with him and Boston Scott for sure. And Corey Clement. Also, if this injury lingers, pick up Corey Clement for a fab dollar. So,
why him over a Boston Scott?
Boston Scott is probably rostered in most leagues already because of last year. Dynasty leagues.
Mm-hmm.
I like Cam Newton this week. I know people say the Seattle defense is scary, but look at what Matt Ryan did to him last week. And Cam Newton can go to the air. So I think we're going to see less rushing yards and more air yards out of Cam this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Cam would be smart. So go. Oh, sorry, Harry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, everyone, myself included, is expecting this to be a run-heavy game with Cam Newton, but it's Bill Belichick. So watch he flip the script and find some other way for you to win your matchup. What were you going to say, Nate?
I'll piggyback off what you were saying. Pete Carroll assumes it's probably going to be a run-heavy game, which means a lot of Jamal Adams in the box. And the way Jamal Adams looked last week, if Cam's smart, he throws the ball a little bit more than that RPO that they weren't going to do, that they all of a sudden did do. Amazing. Coaches don't do what they say they're going to do.
It's almost like there's some strategy in playing football.
Stupid.
Of course, Ryan, you're all on board the Matt Ryan trend this week, right?
It's not just the Matt Ryan train. I mean, I'm a Matt Ryan homer, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I mean, I'm pretty sure Vegas had this as the highest over-under in the week, which to me just screams fantasy points. If they're going to score as many points as what is expected, people have to throw the ball and people have to catch the ball. I'm all about Matt Ryan trying to keep up with that Dallas offense.
Hey, Todd, I want to get your opinion as a resident Saints fan. With Michael Thomas going down for a few weeks now with this high ankle sprain, what are we really thinking about Drew Brees from a fantasy standpoint? I mean, I guess we were all kind of thinking, okay, well, he will do all right. He's not going to be like the QB1 or anything. I mean, but he'll be a serviceable. He would be the QB1. He would be a QB1. But is he even that this week without Michael Thomas or going forward?
I mean, even with Michael Thomas, I think he was probably more of a back-end QB1. I mean, I downgrade him a little bit without Mike Thomas, obviously, because that's our offense for the main part. But, I mean, he still has Alvin Kamara. I mean, he's a completion percentage guy.
Right.
So he's still going to – so, in a sense, he's still going to he's still got to throw. He's still going to get the ball completed. He's going to find Manny Sanders, Jared Cook, Alvin Kamara. I mean, he's going to find his guys. So I'm not worried about him. I mean, I think our offense definitely takes a downgrade. Maybe the touchdowns and all that kind of stuff aren't coming as smoothly as they would with Mike Thomas there.
Yeah, Thomas wasn't a field stretcher, so it's not like you're missing that.
But he moved the chains, so
yeah, exactly.
That's a big part. When the guy that moves the chains for you is not on the field, that's a big hit.
Well, you're forgetting about the number one receiving option on that team, who was Drew Brees' number one target, or should I say his first target last week, and that was, of course, Taysom Hill. So, show some love for Taysom Hill there. He can move the chains.
Well, we're definitely going to use him this week. I know that.
Yeah, see this week and going forward too. Switching over to running backs now. You mentioned him, Alvin Kamara, but we'll start off with CMC. Until I'm proven wrong that he can't be the running back one from week to week, I'm always going to put him as my running back one. We have Zeke Elliott. This was before the news came down that Tyron Smith wasn't going to be there, and that they were down to meaning the Dallas Cowboys, are down to their fourth and fifth offensive linemen. I think that most recent news definitely bumped Zeke down a little bit, but the volume should be there. The question is how effective and efficient he will be with those yards. David, what are your thoughts on Zeke?
It's more, what are my thoughts on not having Saquon Barkley there? What's going on? But anyway,
he's 6.
He's 6. It's still crazy not seeing Saquon in the top 5. Zeke, I still do like. I know. The O-line and Tyron Smith is a huge part for him, but we saw last week as well. He got one of his touchdowns, catching it out of the backfield. They're using him a lot more in the slot now. So especially in PPR, he's still going to be a viable option. He's still going to get 20 to 30 touches a game.
Mike, who's a running back that's not on this list that you're kind of all in on? Let me guess. Miles Sanders?
Actually, it's David Montgomery for me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, if Benny Snell can do what he did last week against the Giants defense, I do think that David Montgomery is a superior back to Benny Snell. So I like him. I've also been oh my God, I can't talk. David Montgomery fan for some time.
Right.
So, and just for the record, if James Conner is out for an extended period of time, don't rush out and overpay for those Steelers running back. It was a pretty even split last week. Benny Snell got all the rushing work, and Jalen Samuels got all the receiving work. So Benny Snell's not going to be a 3-down back if James Conner is out for an extended period of time as well.
Good to know. Nate, who's a running back that you're interested in playing?
I'm actually kind of intrigued with Austin Eckler against my Chiefs. He's had good history against them. But what I'm intrigued to find out this week is if it's going to be a trend that he's not going to be as heavily involved in the passing game. I can't believe that for the life of me. I mean, I don't think that they're going to just unincorporate him into that, and it's going to be the Joshua Kelly and Austin Eckler between the tackles show. That seems like an irresponsible approach. But he's averaged, right around 17 points over the last 2 years, 3 games against the Chiefs. So I see that being where we have him at, like right at the borderline RB2. I think he could finish inside that RB1.
And this was my fear before going into the season about Austin Eckler. Prior to last year, where he caught nearly 1,000 receiving yards, he'd not exceeded 400 receiving yards in any year, and not exceeded, I believe, 300 rushing yards too. So if we lose that receiving work that made him what he was last year, then Austin Eckler gets a big downgrade, to be honest. I think Tyrod is rushing the ball where, Philip Rivers would dump it off. I mean, look what we saw with Rivers last week with Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines. That's what Rivers loves to do. It's not a Tyrod Taylor trait. Say that 7 times fast. Tyrod Taylor trait.
Well, seeing as how I couldn't get sit show out correctly, I'll pass on that one. Running back I'm interested in is Josh Jacobs. Look, he had a fantastic week against Carolina. I'm kind of one of those, let me see it again. But he does have an interesting matchup with the New Orleans Saints. And I don't just mean from a rushing volume. One of our writers here at Fantasy and Frames, Jonathan Klanowski, he heads up our 4-eyed observation article series. And he was looking at Josh Jacobs. And we were looking at target share because we all know during the offseason, or maybe you don't know, there was a lot of talk of getting him more involved in the passing game. And so when looking at target share percentages last week, Darren Waller led the team with 28.6, but coming in at number 2 at 21.4% target share was Josh Jacobs. So for 1 week, they're looking like they're actually trying to get him into the passing game. they brought in a couple people in the draft, and they then let go of said people in the draft. I don't even remember their names. That's how fast they were in and out of camp. What are your thoughts on Josh Jacobs? Let's go to Todd.
RB1, especially with the passing work that he was getting. Last year, they spread the ball around. I think they had 3 running backs who had 20-plus catches or something like that. So they really spread the ball around. If he's getting the receiving work, not even all of it, if he's getting, honestly, a couple targets a game, he's so much better than what his value was coming into the season.
Oh, yeah.
The receiving work, just especially in PPR, if he's getting that receiving work, he's a top 12 running back for me. Even higher, honestly, probably top 8.
Nice. And then let me ask you a question, Ryan. How are you feeling about Todd Gurley this week?
I mean, I like him. I love any piece in that game. I'm all about. Like I said earlier, it's the highest scoring game according to Vegas this week. Highest over under. I want any skin I can get in that game. For me though, when it comes to the guys I'm interested in that aren't on this list, I'm really interested in Aaron Jones this week. I think that the Green Bay Packers are going to get up big in the first half. I think Aaron Rodgers is just going to air out the ball, and then they're just going to whittle away and kill the time with the run game after that.
It was interesting you bring that up because a lot of us were expecting last week this to be a primarily run-heavy Packers offense, given how they were last year with LaFleur, and it was anything but last week. So it's interesting to see how if they adjust the script at all, or if this is what they go with.
Aaron Rodgers' revenge season.
No, that's definitely a good point. Now, it's funny we mentioned the Vikings. They're heading up to Indianapolis, and I'm actually looking forward to this game. I think this has shootout potential as well. And let's just point out the elephant in the room. Jonathan Taylor's the RB1 there for Indy. Is this, I think the Minnesota Vikings are at bottom of the league when it came to run defense. Is this his coming out game, or is this going to still be a split with Nyheim Hines after his big week last week? David, what are your thoughts here?
No, I mean, we discussed this on Wednesday a little bit, and I think people are going to be beaten down, big time by Nyheim Hines this week. It is Jonathan Taylor's backfield. The touchdowns that he got, they were, short yardage ones, and he rushed 7 times for 28 yards, I believe. Yes, 4 yards a carry. That's okay, but they're going to see what they got in their second round pick in Jonathan Taylor. I think they're going to feed him 15, 20 touches at least.
All right, let's head over now to wide receivers. At number 1, Devonta Adams. He had a monster week last week. Then Adam Thielen. I'm a big fan of Adam Thielen. There you go, David. DeAndre Hopkins made the list this week.
Thank you.
Julio Jones, and then Allen Robinson.
I like that. Allen Robinson on the end there.
For me, squeaky wheel gets the grease. When he's talking trades, but then not talking trades, and then there's all this rumbling. That they're going to emphasize the passing game there and get him those targets. But so Todd, are you first of all, one? Are you all in on Allen Robinson this week, or do you think there's another receiver on the Bears that could see some potential upside there?
Oh, well, first off, I love Allen Robinson, target monster, but they're going up against the Giants, so I think they're going to be able to score some points. I think Allen Robinson's going to be able to get his, but yeah, like you were saying, I am a big fan of Anthony Miller. Since the beginning of the first half or second half of last season, he's been the man in the slot for them and has just done nothing but produce. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson this week.
Mike, who's a receiver on this list that you're interested in seeing this week, or at least have high hopes on?
Who is or isn't on this list?
Is not.
So I like Quintez Cephas. It looks like he's going to be starting with Kenny Galladay out. If you listen to my podcast, I'm a huge Quintez Cephas fan. He did have 10 targets last week, 3 catches for 43 yards. I know the catch percentage was only 30. I have no reason to believe that he can't improve on that. He went to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's not really the biggest passing school, but in his senior year, he had 901 yards, 7 touchdowns, and averaged 15.3 yards per reception. So if you could do that at Wisconsin, there's no reason to think he can't be second fiddle to Kenny Galladay when he comes back, because Marvin Jones hasn't looked the greatest thus far.
That's a good point. Speaking of your podcast, the Dynasty Rewind podcast, check them out every week. Friday nights, I believe, is when you go live, and I think you have some more shows going on during the week. Is that right? Or
we go live Friday nights around 9. Tuesday nights at 9, we do a waiver wire show. And then Wednesday or Thursday, we have an IDP show that comes out, a waiver wire IDP show. That's Oklahoma Doug bringing that to you. So you only hear me do the ads on that show, and then I mix his stuff in. So yeah, we got a lot going on. So hopefully helping people out this season.
Absolutely. You should definitely go check over see the Dynasty Rewind podcast, listen to it, subscribe to it, follow them on YouTube, all that. It's
All
really
of it,
great content. Follow them, obviously, on Twitter at the Dynasty Rewind.
The one receiver I was going to say that's not on this list, and I can't believe I'm going to say this. It's kind of like, someone who gets cheated on 10 times and you tell your friends, trust me, they told me they're going to be different. It's Corey Davis. I do like him against that Jags backfield. I feel sick saying it, but I do think he's going to have a decent game this week. That is not a secondary I'm worried about. He is the number one there. With so much attention on Derrick Henry, he's going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage, so he's going to have the opportunity. But yeah, it might be a good play.
Okay, so 2 questions with that. 1, do you script all these things out, all these intros for every player out before you come on the air, or is this just you ad-libbing?
I'm just a weirdo. Who comes up with these things.
Because this is an awesome skill that you're showing. 2, are you concerned about Jonnu Smith getting some of that targets percentage and taking away from Corey Davis?
No, because we've seen from Tannehill so far, he's not a guy who likes his big body receivers for a safety blanket. He's not afraid to go deep down the field. Obviously, we've seen that with AJ Brown. I think he's going to give Corey Davis the shot. It's either them rushing the ball or really going deep. They're not really intermediary pass team, which really helps tight ends. So I don't think Jonnu Smith is going to have any uptick at all, to be honest.
All right, Nate, with you, a wide receiver who's not on this list.
So going a little bit deeper, we were talking earlier about New England maybe having to pass the ball a little bit more. If Julian Edelman has the same role like Russell Gage did against Marquise Blair last week, he has an opportunity to just be target monster. And I'm not the biggest Edelman fan this year as far as within that offense, but I mean, he's pretty much what we have him at 39. So I mean, he could easily deliver wide receiver 2 value. If you're in a pinch, 10 plus targets, pretty safe to assume.
Right.
And you drafted Julian Edelman probably as your wide receiver 3 or 4.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
He's probably in your flex. I mean, that's a pretty decent flex, especially in PPR.
Mm-hmm. That's a good call. Let's switch it over to tight ends now. Shocker, Nate, you'll like this. Travis Kelce in at 1, Mark Andrews at 2, Ertz at 3, Waller in his 28% target share at 4, Hunter Henry. This was kind of tricky for me to put on here. I really wanted to put Noah Fant at first, and then obviously I shouldn't say obviously. I was kind of on board the Jonnu train here. But with Cortland Sutton coming back, that is a concern about his target share, meaning Noah Fant. Hunter Henry, however, look, we were all talking on our 4th and Frames live stream start-sit show. Got that out right. Last Wednesday. And we were talking about, Mike Williams being that big body wide receiver, that guy that Tyrod Taylor can go after. Well, Hunter Henry is also that, red zone target that he could also go after, but so it becomes like a toss-up, Mike Williams or Hunter Henry. If you had to pick one receiving target for the Chargers, Nate, who are you going after? Is it Mike Williams or is it Hunter Henry? Are you fading Hunter Henry altogether? Just give us your knowledge.
Dawson Eckler. I just told you earlier. Aren't you listening?
Is that it? Is that the only Charger?
Yeah. No. Actually, it's it probably is Mike Williams. He has right now we're beat up in the secondary. I think Matthew's going to stay up a little bit to try to prevent and slow down a little bit of the Hunter Henry. I don't know if he can stop him necessarily, but Mike Williams seems to be actually used to be Tyrell Williams. So maybe we'll get confused and think we see Williams on the back of the jersey and give big yards to him this week. But as a whole, I would say I would probably lean Mike Williams more so than Hunter Henry.
I don't know. See, I think this week they're going to be feeding the Keenan. That's they paid that man big money. Last week they didn't need to use him. That's the fact. But he's the number one receiver there. He works everywhere, out wide, in the slot. So I think they're going to utilize Keenan Allen a lot more this week.
In all the years he's been in the league, I have never been able to figure out Keenan Allen.
I don't think he has either. So
It's so difficult to figure out when to play him because you sit him and then he gets 37 points on your bench. You're like, oh, come on. You didn't do anything for 3 weeks. You're like a more talented Sammy Watkins. Like,
see, I'm all about targets. If someone gives me the targets, then to me that says opportunity. Just like we saw in AJ Green on Thursday night. Yes, he had a poor performance, but I'm putting him back in my lineup next week because 13 targets means they trust him. They
hey,
trust
your Odell
Keenan
call
Allen.
panned out.
What's that, sir?
Your Odell call panned out.
Yeah, Odell wasn't too bad, but nearly got 2.
One catch. It was that one big catch. Other than that, he really didn't do much. I'd probably sell high on Odell right now.
Points.
Points are points.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, I put Zach Ertz here at 3, but how far should I be putting Dallas Goedert after his performance last week?
I mean, you could probably swap Ertz and Goddard out at this point. Ertz was startable enough. He did get a touchdown, but there was, I remember later in the game, it was either 3rd and 7, 4th and 7. Wentz put the ball where it was either an incompletion or Ertz could catch it, and Ertz just short-armed it. And I don't know if that's the contract talks, and he's just like, whatever, I'm going to be out of here. But until I really see him playing like Zach Ertz, I'm down on him. The Zach Ertz of old, because there was actually a lot of passes in that game where it was good ball placement. They always tell the quarterback, put it where it's either an incompletion or only the wide receiver catch it. Sean Jackson short-armed a few. Zach Ertz short-armed a few. And, hey, not to make excuses because they lost, but I did not like the effort in the second half from that receiving core. As decimated as it already is.
I expected Ertz to eat that game too. Both Dallas Goedert and Ertz, and it just wasn't out that way.
Yeah.
I know it's a received question, but Mike, I'm curious what your thoughts are on Jalen Reagor after seeing him last week.
I'm optimistic. I didn't think that they were going to go to him deep like that week 1. Also notable, they did target John Hightower 4 times. Really deep dynasty stash for you guys there. Jalen Reagor also got 4 targets, I believe. So just that one completion for 55 yards. I didn't have anywhere where I have him that I was starting him regardless. So, but optimistic, hopefully it pans out.
Hey, Nate, what are your thoughts on TJ Hawkinson after his performance last week and how Kenny Galladay is not going to be in this week? I know, Mike, you mentioned Quintez Cephas, but could this be another Hawkinson game?
I mean, he's got the pedigree to be that player. We're in a similar situation than last year, except for now he's actually healthy for week 2, which I like Hawkinson. I had Hawkinson probably in my top 7. That tight end grouping right there is really, really difficult. Because, if I threw 3 names out, I'm guessing we could have potentially 6 different answers of who you had to start. Hawkinson, Herndon, Jonnu Smith, and then maybe Hayden Hurst, Ryan. He had a bad last week.
For me, it comes down to who gets the touchdown, right?
And if you knew that, we would all be –
exactly. Now you're kind of guessing who do you think who has the better opportunity for a red zone target?
You know where we would be? We'd be over at Monkey Knife Fight using the promo code FRAMES and getting – $50 match, 100% match up to $50 over at Monkey Knife Fight using the promo code FRAMES. All right, let's get into some IDP real quick.
I just wanted to throw a quick tight end in there.
Yeah.
There was reports coming out of LA that Gerald Everett's been dealing with a back injury all week. I like Tyler Higbee. I don't think Everett's going to get much work this week. So,
all right.
Can I throw?
Jorge.
Yeah. Bring it on, everybody.
Todd, you go first.
All right, Jorge. I was going to ask you because you're the Washington fan. What do you think about Logan Thomas?
He's an option. I'm not really feeling this.
Especially this week.
He's an option. I think Budda Baker being there in that secondary is going to limit any tight end upside. Him playing at free safety, although him being obviously a free safety, but he gets the high tackle numbers as well. I'm not too keen on this Washington passing attack just yet. I think this defensive matchup is going to be a little bit difficult for them. I think this is more of a run-heavy approach for Washington just because of the volume there. So I'm not really big on Logan Thomas this week, but going forward.
The number 2 going forward?
The number 2 tight end? I think
the number 2 passing option on the team going forward.
Actually, I'm still going to hang on to my shares of Steven Sims. I think he has that potential, especially coming out of the slot, to do some good. You look at what happened towards the end of last season with McLaurin, him on the field with Sims. It was Sims that was leading in fantasy points per game. It was Sims that was leading in targets when McLaurin was there. So I think he's definitely a viable number 2. Thomas there. Logan Thomas would be the number 3 receiving option, I believe.
You know, the one thing about Washington, Scary Terry, he's scaring me more than a college kid in a horror movie. I'm really worried that Dwayne Haskins is going to be Dwayne Haskins of old. He didn't really do anything to impress me last week, and I don't know, those people who drafted Terry McLaurin as their overall wide receiver one might be in for a little bit of hurt this year.
Good call. And as a Washington fan, I hope that that's not the case. Moving forward, let's get to some defensive lineman rankings real quick. Nick Bosa going up against the Jets. Shocker that I have him ranked as the number one defensive lineman. Number two, however, is a very interesting play for those of you in IDP leagues because he has – well, Nate, why don't you talk about Aldon Smith and tell us why we should be excited about him?
Well, one, I'm happy that he has hopefully – exercised his demons and gotten past him because you go back 5 years and, he was on I hate to say a Hall of Fame career. I mean, path, because that's probably a little early, but he's the fastest NFL player ever to 30 sacks. He looked the part last week. And in a lot of these leagues that you get multiple or dual eligibility where he's linebacker and defensive line, a linebacker tackle volume at a defensive line position is kind of that proverbial, we say cheat code for the quarterbacks that can rush. This is kind of the same thing. Tackle volume out of defensive lineman that is an edge rusher as well. And he does everything right. And I think the sky's the limit if he can stay on the field and keep his nose clean.
That's a good call. Trey Flowers, he was one of the higher defensive linemen scoring last week. I think this matchup with Green Bay, it goes back to, I believe, Ryan, what you were saying, they may ice this game pretty early on and just rely on Aaron Jones. And, Aaron Jones, he's not just one of these running backs who goes to the outside and tries to get those edge yards. He'll go right at you. So I think that definitely helps this week using that narrative. All right, let's go to defensive backs. We talked about him last week. We talked about him earlier today. Jamal Adams, this guy is playing all over the field, playing up in the box. Again, if this is a run-heavy game for New England, this suits him right there. I know, David, you're not too thrilled about that assessment. Buda Baker, Marcus May. Nate, let's go back to Marcus May, another Jet here. What are your thoughts with Marcus May?
That's who I was alluding to earlier is, I'll be honest, I was a little bit wrong. I thought that it would be Bradley McDougald that would really step in and kind of be more of the Jamal Adams-esque role. And May basically, I don't want to say he filled Jamal Adams' shoes, but he did a very good job or impersonation of Jamal Adams last week. He was in the box, consistently. He was rushing the passer. He was everywhere. And I mean, the same thing should be said this week, especially if we're looking at the game script. That should be on the ground the entire time because let's be honest, do you trust either one of those two quarterbacks to throw the ball more than 25, 30 times this week?
Not so much, no.
So it's going to be, and the same thing kind of goes for both. IDP on both sides is going to be, the tackle volume should be there. Fred Warner, if we're going to talk about linebackers, another one to kind of pivot to, who I think could have a heavy volume. But that's assuming the Jets stay on the field. What do we think to score that? What's the total point total? I
don't think it's very high.
No, this is a question. I'm going to see 24.
If that.
Yeah, that's scary sad.
Another safety, Jonathan Abram for the Las Vegas Raiders. Look, his season was cut short last year, his rookie year, but he came out with a passion. He had at least double-digit fantasy points in most IDP scoring settings. And he's going to get that tackle volume this week going against probably a run-heavy Saints offense, I believe. So look for him to produce again this week. And, of course, Landon Collins, normally considered to be the defensive back one at the strong safety position. I think he has a good bounce-back game this week. And really, whatever running attack they plan to implement in Arizona with Kenyon Drake there, I think you're going to see Landon Collins. Not to mention Landon Collins could probably be a spy for Kyler Murray, seeing as how he plays some of these linebacker roles from week to week. And speaking of linebackers, let's get into those. Obviously, Darius Leonard, he is a freak. He is the number one overall linebacker in fantasy football, followed by Blake Martinez, Bobby Wagner, Jalen Smith. So, I was fading Jalen Smith in the offseason just because Leighton Vander Esch is moving back to middle linebacker. And as we all know, middle linebackers are the hashtag tackle machines of fantasy football. Now with Vander Esch out with a broken collarbone, Jalen Smith is moving back to middle linebacker. That only fits that narrative of him being a hashtag tackle machine. He also can play in coverage. He can also rush the quarterback. He really is the Swiss Army knife of this linebacking core for Dallas. And of course, TJ Watt, if you're in the fantasy football leagues where TJ Watt is getting you less than 6 fantasy points a week, talk to your commissioners about changing these scoring settings, because TJ Watt is a man amongst boys. He rushes the passer like nobody else, even when they're up by 15 points, I think it was last week in the fourth quarter. He was still rushing hard. He can make plays. He had an interception last week, I believe, a couple passes defense. I mean, he is all over the field. Again, another Swiss Army knife type of linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And considering who they're going against this week, it's safe to say that TJ Watt's going to have a pretty good performance. And
all right, quick question. Nope,
yeah.
Here we go. We have to answer this since we didn't know the. All right, Mike, is it at linebacker? Is it Nathan Jerry or Nathan Gary?
Whatever. I've heard it. I don't think anybody here knows either.
We had you on here.
We just say Gary or Jerry. I really honestly don't know. We just say whatever.
No, it's funny because we had mentioned him last week. We mentioned him last week during our Wednesday show because with him not being a middle linebacker anymore and TJ Edwards now moving to middle linebacker, I was concerned about him last week. But no, he still performed. He's still a good, viable IDP option there.
He is a fantastic IDP option. He's not a very good real-life IDP option. I saw him chasing a lot of guys last week against Washington. Also, Nick Witkowski is out. I don't know if you guys saw that. Or he was doubtful, so I'm assuming he's going to be out. I have him in a lot of places too. So.
Gotcha.
So this could be a bounce-back game for Corey Littleton.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
all right, let's go. Go ahead.
I was going to ask Mike one more question on defensive line. Does Aaron Donald have to break 4? Is it going to be quadruple teamed, or is there potential for 5 linemen to line up against him to stop it?
They're going to need to.
It's going to be interesting. I expect to see a lot of Carson Wentz bootlegging away from the pressure. To be honest with you, it's probably the best thing to do when you have pressure in your face the whole game. But really, all he has to do is just show up to eat this week. To be honest with you.
All right, let's get into some sit questions. I got a bunch of questions here that people have asked. Let's start with, and they're going to be not easy. David, let's start with you. If you had to flex one of the two, who are you going with, James Conner or Cortland Sutton?
Oh man, that is. So do I want broccoli or Brussels sprouts? I don't know.
Was it Ryan? I'm not nice. No, that's
Can I make a waiver claim?
I'm gonna have to pass on both. But no, look, Sutton probably. Even though there is the injury risk, but he's the better option out of those two. But definitely, I guarantee you there's better options on the waiver wire.
Todd, let's go with you for the next start sit. Anthony Miller or Scott Miller? Both slot wide receivers.
I'd be playing Anthony Miller. Scott Miller, Mike Evans is obviously going to get the majority of the targets, and then Tom Brady targeted the tight end 30% of the time last week. So, I mean, yeah, Scott Miller might get 5-6 targets, but Anthony Miller's playing the Giants, and that defense is atrocious. I think Anthony Miller could have, like I said earlier, Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson, I expect to have big weeks.
So I have a question because I'm stuck at a running back conundrum. James Conner or Mark Ingram? Nate?
Ooh.
I think it's funny. Jorge's like, I've received a ton of questions from random people.
And it's all his lineup?
It's all his lineup.
We're setting his lineups.
I'm currently looking at my phone. Who's saying? David said what now? Okay,
yeah.
good.
I'm playing Jorge this week. Repeat that again. Mark Ingram or who?
James Conner.
God, I mean, I got to go. I'm going to go Ingram just because I don't trust. I trust Ingram. If they were both to get 20 carries, who would stay on the field for the full 20? And I think that Ingram has a better chance.
All right. Mitchell Trubisky or Matt Stafford? Ryan.
I'm going to go Trubisky in this one. Stafford doesn't have I love Stafford. I see Todd Jaw just drop. I'm not a Trubisky guy. But as we said earlier, squeaky wheel gets the grease. I think Allen Robinson is going to be targeted. We've been talking about how much we don't mind playing Anthony Miller this week. I'm not afraid of the defense in Detroit, or not Detroit. Sorry. I'm not afraid of the defense too much on Green Bay,
New York.
And I I'm going to go Trubisky. I hate saying Trubisky, but I'm going to go him.
Mike, Corey Davis or Paris Campbell this week?
Oh,
Oh.
I know my answer.
That's easy.
I guess Corey Davis. So with AJ Brown being out, in Indianapolis, they still have T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman, although he didn't do too much. They got some good receiving options out of the backfield. I also like Mo Alley Cox this week. With Jack Burrow being out. I mean, you want to talk about a super. He's got to be a cheap DFS play, right? I would imagine.
I've seen people picking him up in Dynasty all over the place this week.
But did you see him at VCU? I mean, he was a really, really good basketball player, and he's athletic as can be. Sorry, I
set him as your showdown captain. That could pay off possibly. And I'm not the biggest DFS guy, but I guess I'll go Corey Davis here. Begrudgingly, I'd like to add that.
All right, Nate, let me ask you 2 IDP questions before we get our helmet picks of the week. John Bostic of Washington or Micah Kaiser of the Rams?
Kaiser. I see, because Aaron Donald, I believe exactly like Mike was saying. I think the pressure that Donald exerts up front either does one of two things. It either leaves Kaiser to have more opportunity, passes on short passes. Wentz isn't going to have time to throw deep to anything. Everything's going to be over the middle. Everything's going to be intermediate.
Quick and underneath all day.
And that, I think, fits into Kaiser. Not to say that that's not Bostic as well, because the same narrative I just played could be for Chase Young, Ioannidis, Kerrigan, etc. But you asked me to pick, and I don't like your question, so I'm going to go with the short and easy answer.
Well, if you didn't
pick between Trubisky, then come on.
Right.
Final question: Jabril Peppers, strong safety for the Giants, or Minka Fitzpatrick of the Steelers?
I'm taking Jabril because I don't want to have to rely on a turnover that I think that's going to help Minka. My personal answer would always be Jeremy Chin to that question, whoever is, just because I have Chin everywhere, and this is about me, not about our proverbial
the rookie
question that you can bring to us.
Jeremy Chin is a great person who didn't make this list. He's probably a top 12 defensive back at strong safety. He had a great first game performance there for the Panthers. All right, so as we do every week, just to justify to my wife that it's okay to buy these mini helmets at $30 a pop, I'm going to give you the picks that I think are definitely locks for the week. Going to go the Bears against the Giants. I am going to go Seattle against the Patriots. Sorry.
It's going to be
David.
Dang.
Get out of here.
Sorry, Mike. It's going to be the Rams versus the Eagles. It's going to go Rams.
Boo.
And tell me if this is really a bold pick here, but I'm going to go Buffalo over Miami. So those are some pretty obvious, hopefully obvious, definite wins this week. So I just want to thank Mike, Ryan, David. Thank you very much for coming by. I hopefully have you on soon. Again, Todd, Nate, as always, great job, gentlemen. The rest of you, watch football, enjoy, and we'll see you next week, folks.
Cheers.